Hello there, my friends, and welcome to Fire Engineering's podcast network and this month's episode of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department. This is the podcast dedicated to our great volunteer fire service and getting everyone to embrace the belief and the mantra that developing and displaying and maintaining a professional image and a professional reputation is the duty and obligation of firefighters everywhere, paid or volunteer. And always remember, true professionalism is never defined by a paycheck. Tom Merrill here. Greetings from snowy Buffalo, New York. Happy holidays. Happy New Year to all of you. Recording this just at the end of 2025. I know it's going to air in mid-January, so a happy 2026 to all of you. New Year meeting FDIC is right around the corner. Registration is open for the big show. And I am again excited to be back in Indianapolis from April 20th to the 25th. And I hope to see you there. As of now, scheduled to present my professional development for the volunteer firefighter course on Thursday, April 23rd. I believe it's a 10:30 or 8:30 a.m. start. But be an hour and 45-minute session this year. Always redoing it, always tweaking it and modifying it. Talking about current events in the volunteer fire service and things that help shape or detract from our professional image and reputation. So hope to see you there in Indy. Hope you can join me. If not, please reach out to me and we can hook up and just network at night or at any other classes because, as you know, it's the place to be come April. And in addition to the big show in Indianapolis in April, I'm going to be again traveling around the country delivering my professional message and other messages focusing on volunteer fire service leadership, appreciating our fire service history, officer development classes, and others that I do as I travel the country. Hopefully I'll be out your way. You can always head over to my website, theprofessionalvolunteerfiredepartment.com. You can see where I'm going to be. See where I'm planning on going this year, try to update it as regularly as possible. And if you just happen to be in the area, heck, love to meet you. So love to have you come out and join us in class. So check it out on the professionalvolunteerfiredepartment.com. See where I'm going to be. In addition to that, it's got links to all my podcasts, all the articles I've written, class offerings, all that type of stuff. Yeah, check it out. I told myself I was not going to be as busy in 26 as I was in 25 because I'm still working full time. I became a grandfather a couple months ago, and I have my wife saying, "Where are you going now? We got this to do or that to do." So I'm trying to slow down a little bit, but hey, I love meeting the brothers and sisters, and I'm so passionate about this message. So we'll see. We'll see if I slow down. I think I'm 6 or so already in the books for next year. So we're not even into 26 yet when I'm recording this. So real quick, before I launch in this episode today, excuse me, of the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, I just wanted to pass on some information that was recently released. Saw it in one of the periodicals. You know, I'm always reading just like you every day about our fire service. In one of the magazines, one of the periodicals had some information that I thought was important for volunteer firefighters to know. It's a fire cancer toolkit. And the Firefighter Cancer Assessment and Prevention Study Group, they developed a free digital toolkit, and they call it the Cancer Awareness Prevention and Education for Volunteer Firefighters, or CAPE. It's going to provide resources that can be used for all 11 cancer prevention practices that are outlined in the Lavender Ribbon Report. And if you don't know what the Lavender Ribbon Report is, I encourage you after this show to Google it, to look it up. It's put out by the International Association of Fire Chiefs, the VCOS section as well, and some others. They got together and put together the Lavender Ribbon Report, and it's the best practices that firefighters, not just volunteer, but firefighters everywhere, can follow to mitigate this very real cancer risk that firefighters face. So this is a free digital toolkit available for firefighters. It includes a video, it includes a PowerPoint presentation, and it can be used for training, and it can make our members aware, hey, this is a real problem. It's very real. We can't bury our heads in the sand. Here's some tips that can help you work with these 11 Lavender Ribbon Report points on how to reduce the cancer epidemic in the fire service. To learn more, you can go to capecancerprevention.org, capecancerprevention.org for more information. And again, you can't bury our heads in the sand. It's something that as a professional firefighter, we need to be aware of. We need to make sure we're taking the proper steps in our firehouse to educate our members and to put practices in place to mitigate this cancer epidemic, which is ravaging the fire service. So anyway, on the last show, we had Chief Tim Pillsworth come on, and he discussed an article that he wrote for Fire Engineering titled, "Are You a Shark or a Dinosaur?" Interesting article. So I had to have him on the show to talk about it. And on the podcast, he dived into the need to embrace change in our volunteer fire service, to meet the challenges in the changing dynamics that are causing struggles everywhere. And he used the shark dinosaur analogy to highlight how the shark changed through the years to keep up with the changing environment. And as a result, is still alive and thriving today, as opposed to the dinosaur now that's no longer on the earth. And while science can give us all these different reasons as to maybe why the dinosaurs aren't here anymore, one thing is true. They did not or could not adapt quick enough to the changes in the environment and around them, and they suffered the consequences. And we had a great conversation as Chief Pillsworth offered some ideas on things we can do to focus on the volunteer fire service and adapt or change and survive. And one topic that we briefly touched on last show concerned responding with lights and sirens to emergency calls, or let's be honest, to even non-emergency calls. And quite frankly, the very real fact that not all calls warrant a lights and siren response. It's always an important topic. I've talked about it with people. It's part of my longer professional volunteer fire department conversation, and it can be controversial. I've gotten in some discussions with people that aren't happy that you bring up the fact that not everything has to be a lights and sirens response. And it is worth talking about. And let's be open and honest and have a good discussion about it. So coincidentally, I happen to see a new presentation making the rounds here in New York State focusing on this exact topic. And I see it's being presented by my friend and also a past guest from this show, been on the show a few times, Dave Denniston. He's been out and about presenting a topic called Beyond the Sirens, and it's been very well received. And, you know, in a nutshell, the topic says right there, as first responders, we receive extensive training in an effort to ensure we operate vehicles as safely as possible. I mean, we want to get to an incident safely. If we don't get there, we can't help whoever has called us, right? But despite the efforts to make emergency vehicle operations as safe as possible, we see many accidents that can be prevented. So that presentation discusses how we can prevent some of these accidents from happening, and very openly talks about maybe not everything has to be a lights and siren response. So as we enter the new year, as we start off 2026 and we think about some things we can do to make things better, to make things safer for our volunteer fire service, and I might add a level of protection for our departments as well, very litigious society today, I want to take a deep dive into this topic just a little bit more. So I want to welcome Dave Denniston onto the show. Like I said, he's been on the show before. He's a well over 30-year member of the fire service, active member, past chief in Cortlandville, New York. He's also a fire commissioner. I believe you still are a director for the Association of Fire Districts of the state of New York, correct, Dave?
Yeah, service vice president now. So.
Okay. Yeah, your record is long and prestigious. And in addition to that, you have a paid job too, right? Director of Risk Management for McNeil and Company, which is an insurance company. So I believe you're well versed to talk on this. I'm sure you've seen some things, you've heard some things, and experienced some things that are going to play into this conversation. So welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time on this very snowy day to join me here.
It's good to be here, Tom, and Happy New Year to you. When you went with the shark dinosaur thing, I thought you were starting to call me old, and then you threw in the 30-year fire service thing. So now I'm really starting to wonder where.
I'm right there with you, brother. So yeah, we're both exhibiting that. So,
but you mentioned the class beyond the sirens. We put that together, not really knowing what the reception would be out there, because again, it is a controversial topic for some people. You take away lights and sirens, and it's like you took away somebody's birthday sometimes. Like, well, we got to get there fast, and we've got to, the law allows us to do it, and all those kind of things. But as we start looking at this, especially from the insurance side of things, we're looking at the number of accidents that come in. And, every Monday morning on my desk is what I call the claims report. And I'm seeing claims from across the nation, every claim that comes into our claims department. And as I look down through there's some very serious patterns that are shaping up and stand right out. Very few times on a Monday do I go, never seen that one before. It's always the same thing over and over and over again. And a lot of those have to do with vehicle related incidents. So we start looking at that going, okay, why are these occurring? Yes, the roads are a dangerous place. We all know that. Yes, we're trying to get there fast to help the public. We get that as well. But are we doing everything possible? And as I look through those incidents, I always ask myself, was this preventable? Could we have done things better as a fire service to have kept this accident from occurring? Because when they do occur, they turn lives upside down. There's a financial aspect of it. No big deal. We smash up a fire truck. That's why you have insurance. We'll write the check, buy a replacement truck or fix your truck. We'll fix the damages to the other person's car. God forbid they have injuries. We're going to take care of that as well. But what we can't do is fix the reputation of all these departments that are involved. We can't take that glossy color photo that's going to show up on your newspaper, if you still have a print newspaper in your area, or on all the websites tomorrow, or on the local newscasts, of your truck buried into somebody's car in the intersection. And then the public, rightfully so, starts asking questions. Yeah. Why did this occur? Why did this have to occur? What are these guys doing? And, we've seen news story after news story after news story, and we focus on some of those in the course when we prevent it, of a news channel somewhere interviewing the public, and the public going, I'm on the road minding my own business, and this reckless, irresponsible fire vehicle or ambulance is doing these reckless things, and I challenge the class when we get through a couple of those. I go, okay, this one happened to be in Clearwater and this one happened to be down in Texas. Could that be on your local news tonight? Could those kind of things happen in your area tonight? And then I take it a step further. I said, okay, you're the chief of a department and you get a call from one of your local news reporters letting you know that one of your vehicles, emergency vehicles, whether it be a fire truck, a chief's car, an ambulance, or whatever, just collided with a 7-year-old in a school crosswalk and killed him. And then they all kind of sit there and I say, would you be totally surprised if you got that call? And everybody's face kind of drops and they go, boy, that could happen in my area. And then I take it a step further and I says, not only would you not be surprised, but does a certain person's name come to mind that you think probably was driving that vehicle? And some of them say the name or start shaking their heads out or looking at the person next to them going, yeah, that's the person right there. But, I said, that's a problem. If we would not be totally blown away that this could happen in our district, and if we would not be totally surprised that it couldn't be 1 or 2 or 3 different people in our department, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
We've got a serious problem. And then when that does happen, who do we blame? And obviously we blame the driver. Well, a lot of people, they'll blame the 7-year-old for walking through the crosswalk. Well, they should have waited and, that's garbage, okay? But then they blame the driver. The driver should have done better. Boy, we knew they were reckless and those kind of things. I said, okay, is this the first time that driver's done that? Well, probably not. Okay. So who's to blame? Well, the officer's to blame because the officer should have held them accountable. Everybody in that vehicle is to blame because they should have at some point in time saying, what are we doing? What are we thinking? Why are we responding in this fashion? And especially when you start looking at the data and pulling it up and realize what percentage of our calls that we go to are true emergencies.
Right.
It's very small. In most of the departments in my area, my own department, 60 to 70% of our calls are EMS. We don't run an ambulance. So yes, we're doing first response EMS. Yes, we play a role, and yes, we affect the outcome sometimes. But how many calls that we go on are we actually making a difference? And you start looking at the statistics and the data and realizing just how much more dangerous it is as soon as we flip those lights and sirens on and we ask ourselves, why? Why are we doing this? What could we do better? And I'm not, some people have accused me of, well, you don't like lights and sirens and you don't ever want us to use it. No, I don't. I like lights and sirens. Okay. They serve a purpose. But the problem is with the way that we are currently abusing them, and I will call it abuse because I truly believe that we are abusing them in a lot of places and allowing these things to happen, we're going to get them taken away. People go, oh, they'll never take our lights. And that's been there forever and it'll always be there. Okay. I've always said that if we don't step up as a fire service and EMS services and collectively do a better job taking care of ourselves, somebody else is going to do it for us.
Right.
We just went through that, or we're in the middle of that right now with OSHA 1910-156. We did not do a good job as a fire service taking care of our own to the point where somebody else said, we've got to step in and protect these folks. That's the exact same thing that's going to happen with lights and sirens is they're going to go, as the data gets put together and more organizations are signing on, and there's a ton of organizations now that have put studies out there and articles out there about the use of lights and sirens, people are going to go, what are we doing?
Right.
Why aren't we fixing this problem?
I like to say in my presentation, I have a line that I use: just because your minuter goes off or just because your rooftop siren is wailing away doesn't mean you have to drive lights and sirens. And again, we're not trying to take anyone's fun away. We're not trying to be Debbie Downers here. We're just trying to be realistic. What are we doing? And are we making a difference? And is a CO detector beeping with absolutely no symptoms in the residents a lights and sirens response? And I dare say, no, it's not. And it's gotten me in some pretty serious discussions. But the examples are very real. They're current. They don't have to be current, but you noted Clearwater, Texas, Kansas City. When these accidents happen, not only has there been a lot of accidents, but there's been injuries, there's been deaths to both responders and civilians. You do lose that public trust. Heck, you're in the insurance business. What does it do to insurance rates? I mean, we could go on and on and on. These examples you cite current, the poster child in Western New York, and I dare say it reverberated nationwide, for our awareness of this occurred back in 1986 in Darien, New York. Darien, New York, a father, his 8-year-old daughter, and I believe a 9-year-old girl, the daughter's best friend, were all killed when they were going to have a fun day at the Darien Lake Amusement Park. Darien Lake is 20, 30 minutes outside of Buffalo. Wonderful amusement park. We all go there. And they were crossing the highway to go into the entrance in their car, and they got broadsided, I believe. It was broadsided by a fire truck that was relocating to another department. Wasn't even going to an emergency scene. It was doing standby coverage. And it killed a father, his daughter, and daughter's best friend. I mean, that is so tragic. And to me, there's lessons to be learned there. You think you're losing the public trust there? You think some people aren't out there thinking we're just a bunch of cowboys and cowgirls going, Yahoo, let's go? You think we're not being professional if we're not responding with due diligence? But that was a poster child for me. I was a young officer at that time. That reverberated through Western New York. I joined my department in 1982, and I dare say we've been going no lights and sirens to standbys since then. I don't think this made us go no lights and sirens. I think we were already doing it. But again, these things happen. It's not just in the big cities.
And it's not a one-off. I mean, there's countless examples of that exact same thing out there. And when that happens, the press, and probably rightfully so, gets a hold of it, and they start asking questions.
Right.
You mentioned the Kansas City incident. We had an engine, blew a red light. The engine clearly had a red light, did not slow down, did not stop at the intersection, plows into a car, drives that car up onto the sidewalk, and then into a building. Okay? We had 3 people that were killed in that incident. So now, terrible incident. We got 3 people that are killed. trucks responding to an incident, as they should, and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
So now the fire department's down an engine. Okay, firefighters had to be taken out of service while the investigation was done, some injuries and those kind of things. I got 3 civilians that are killed, some in the car and others that were on the sidewalk as this thing plowed into them. I got $32 million in damages because the business, it wrecked into this building. The business had to close, all these kind of things. So there's a $32 million price tag on this thing. Somebody's going to pay, whether you got insurance, whether it's a municipality, whatever, And then the firefighters have got to live with this. The driver of that vehicle
Think
has
of
got
that.
to live with that for the rest of their life. I killed 3 people.
Right.
I'm supposed to be helping my community and doing all these kind of things. And I just killed 3 people. So, when you look at those, you ask yourselves, could Darien, could Kansas City, could any of these other countless examples happen in your district tonight?
Yeah.
And if they could, what am I going to do to prevent it? If that truck had just followed the NFPA standards and stopped at that intersection, made sure the intersection was clear, and then proceeded, we would not have had this incident. Okay. But then this one gets even worse. And that's too many times the tragic part of all these is they do get worse. Because then they start looking at, okay, what was that truck going to? What was the type of call? Was it a true emergency? Did they all these things go on?
Right. And Dave, if I could just say real quick, we're not discounting the fact that there are true emergency calls. I don't even know in the Kansas City incident, it might have been a fire. It might have been a serious emergency medical call. I don't want to discount that. So yes, there are procedures to put in place to ensure we're stopping at red lights, driving with due regard when we are in the emergency mode. But then, like you said, let's be honest, these don't all happen going to real emergency calls. It can be something else that we're about to talk about, but it definitely go on.
Yeah. So no, in that Kansas City example, then the local news station goes down and, requests the tapes from the 911 center. They want to know where this thing was going and all that kind of stuff so they can build their story. Okay. What they found out was this engine had been called off from that call. So they initially dispatched this engine to the call. They realized that there was another closer engine that was going to the call. Dispatcher comes on the air, radios to this, and they play that on the newscast of the dispatcher telling this call, engine 18, pumper 19, whatever the differences were between the two, has got the call, you can stand down. They didn't stand down. They continued their response, lights and sirens. People start scratching their heads going, wow, why was this truck still responding? And we've been there before. You talked about going on the quiet and those type of calls. St. Louis did a study years ago, and they had a breaking point in the city one day where they had several accidents, and they're looking at what this is costing them, and they got rigs out of service and everything else. And, the chief stood up and goes, enough's enough. Majority of the calls that we go to are not true emergencies. We're going to prioritize calls, understand what they are, and there's certain calls we're going to go to. We're going to do what we can, but we're not going to run lights and sirens, and we're not going to, as soon as you turn on those lights and sirens, multiple studies out there about how greatly the percentage of an accident likely to occur increases.
Right.
By turning them off, we can do that. Okay. So then all of a sudden that comes out on the news. And then as they continue to do the investigation, members of the fire department came forward and said, I didn't want to ever drive. And there's letters in this person's personnel file from other members of the department calling out risky behaviors in the past. And people telling their supervisors, I'm not going to ride with that person again because they're putting my life in jeopardy. The news gets a hold of this and broadcasts all that. How do we defend this at that point in time?
Wow.
So it just, and again, you think you're like, you couldn't make this stuff up. I can tell you in incident after incident after incident, as they start digging into these things and unfolding, they find out, it really wasn't an emergency they were going to. It really wasn't a structure fire that they were going to. There really was no lives that they were going to save in this incident, And a lot of that starts with dispatch information. We've got to work with our local dispatch centers and find out, give me all the information that you've got. Right now in my area, very few departments, if it's a structure fire or we think it's something major, very few departments go on their own.
Right. So we got multiple agencies coming.
We're dispatching 5, 6, 7 departments in order to get enough apparatus and enough manpower because we're all struggling to get them to the scene. So now, we all 6 departments get toned out for a structure fire. Dispatcher comes on, says you're going to a reported structure fire or whatever, or going to a structure fire, this address. And then you pull up the I am responding or your dispatch notes or whatever that, and you see in the notes, caller got home from work an hour ago, thought they smelled something funny in the house, and now think that there may have been something that burnt in the trash can and they want the fire department to come check it out. When we're blowing 6 departments, lights and sirens to this call, and we collide with somebody and kill somebody in an intersection, and the local reporters start asking questions about what this was and put that out there, hindsight's 2020. I get it. And we have to assume that maybe it could be. But if we don't have all the information up front, we've done a decent job with that with EMS where we're prioritizing calls. And we're basing it on the type of call, the type of injury, those type of things as to what the response is. We've got some counties that are now starting to do that on the fire side as well. And I think that's an excellent start. I'm not saying we don't go. I'm not saying we don't do things, but we've got to look at how we're going and start prioritizing. Maybe we send 1 vehicle or 2 vehicles, lights and sirens, and then we send everybody else because we want to keep the crew together or we want additional people there if they need to be there. Put them in the truck, put them on the road. There's a ton of other studies that show we really don't save all that much time running lights and sirens. So we greatly increase our risk, and we're not saving a whole lot of time on the other end. Those are the things we got to look at.
What do you say to the people? I get this from both ends because my paid career is as a fire dispatcher, but also as a volunteer firefighter. Understand there are times when units are going lights and sirens, especially for a confirmed working structure fire. No issue there. But what do you say when the argument sometimes is, even though dispatch comes on and says, hey, the homeowner called, they burnt food, that's what set the smoke detector off, or it was a malfunction, that there's absolutely no smoke or sign of fire in the house. You're going to get the what ifs, what if. So is it still a good practice to have all these trucks coming lights and sirens when you've had information from the homeowner, from the alarm company? Granted, sometimes they are wrong. I'm not discounting it. I'm sure there are cases out there. I've worked cases where the alarm company calls and says there's nothing to it, and the fire company got there and there is a fire. Very rare, but it does happen. Do we have a duty and obligation to maybe still send 1 truck with lights and sirens, and maybe not everything else that's coming? Yes, we still need to go. We still need to investigate, but can we do that better?
And I'm not opposed to that. I've advocated for that for years. Send the chief's vehicle, lights and sirens. Send the first engine, lights and sirens if you want to continue it. But once we have that information, homeowner called and they burnt the toast, or the shower steam set it off, or whatever that is. And that happens over and over and over again. Once we have that information, even if you're going to run their lights and sirens, slow down, stop at the intersection. It's not any single one piece. It's all the links in the chain that start to give way when we see these terrible incidents. Yeah. And there's so many things that we could have done. If we shut the lights and sirens off, we wouldn't have been in this mess. Okay. Yeah. If we had just slowed down and stopped at the intersection and cleared it before we blew through it. Well, we still got emergency vehicles blowing through intersections, at 30, 40 miles an hour against a red light. And then wondering why somebody else, maybe they didn't hear us. Maybe they didn't see us. Maybe something else is going on. Physically, how long does it take a car to stop? Even if they do see us, could they stop? So those are the questions that we've got to ask. So when the St. Louis thing came out, one of the things that I did as chief of my department, I go, this is a great idea. We're going to stop responding lights and sirens to these types of calls, and the biggest pushback I got was from my own officers. We can't do that. I said, well, why can't we do that? Well, because if we do it, then the people, they're not going to come if they can't run lights and sirens.
A very common argument against doing what you did. I hear that, the guys and girls just won't come then.
I go, if that's the reason they're coming, let's find them another hobby because this is not a hobby that we're doing here, okay? That you mentioned, and I know they struggle in some areas with that, that the dispatcher gives them additional information and tries to slow them down a little bit. And in one of the classes I presented, I said, if dispatch tells you that the homeowner called and it's burnt toast, shut off the lights and sirens, go investigate this thing. And I had a commissioner in the room raise their hand and say, we can't do that. So, well, what do you mean we can't do that? Because we haven't confirmed that it was just burnt toast. How do we know that the A person didn't break into this house, has a gun to the homeowner's head, and is having the homeowner tell the dispatcher that just so no one shows up so they can continue to kill this person. And I was dumbfounded. I'm going, okay, so when you get to that call, I go, do you request the police at that point and have the police go in and clear the scene prior to you walking into the house? Well, no, that would be stupid. I go, then listen to what you're telling me.
Yeah.
What you're saying is so far-fetched, it's an excuse. And that's all it is. We got to call it what it is when we get that.
In my way of thinking, and I've had this discussion with people, you get the homeowner that calls, or even the alarm company, to say it's nothing, but the person calling, well, the alarm company's not there, but maybe the homeowner's on the first floor and there's an issue on the second floor that they don't know about. Yes, that can happen. But you are going on the best information you have available. And if dispatch says, hey, we talked to the homeowner, they're saying there's nothing here, they don't even want you. Yes, I still advocate you have a duty and obligation to still go to that scene to confirm it. But you have a duty and obligation to drive responsibly. And that may mean cutting off the lights and sirens and still proceeding. God forbid you do pull up and there's fire out the second floor. It's a big mistake that homeowner made, but you are acting on the best information that you have, and that's what the court is going to look at. And you know what we're dealing with today with the court system, the legal system. You are going to get hanged if you don't do things responsibly.
And I get that pushback some too from the dispatchers when I'm having this conversation with them. They're like, well, we're not there, so we don't know exactly what's going on. Okay, but you typed in the notes that the homeowner smelled something 2 hours ago, doesn't think there's a fire, and you put it out as a structure fire. Well, if we don't do that and it was a structure fire, then we're going to be liable. Okay. I have yet to see a successful liability case on those things. I see liability cases every Monday when we blow through that intersection and kill somebody when we didn't need to be.
Right.
So we can, what if it's working together. And I'm not faulting, I've dispatched myself. I'm not faulting the dispatchers. They're under a lot of pressure. They do an amazing job, and I love them for what they do. But if you get information, share that information so everybody's got it. And right now, everybody's got a cell phone. I've got 2 addresses in this county that we go out to on a weekly basis because one's a sewage treatment plant where they've got a flame that burns off the gas on the top of the plant. We get cars trucking by on Route 81 and comes in as a structure fire. If my wife hears one more time me scream at the top of my lungs, this is not a structure fire, okay? Because every time it happens, we've got another place up on Route 81 that's they do hardwood products. They got an outdoor wood furnace. Every time they stoke that thing up, a ton of smoke comes out, and somebody on Route 81 with their cell phone calls it in as a structure fire. Okay, we go there over and over and over again. Am I saying that place never could burn? Absolutely not, because someday it may and it probably will. Okay. But when we know over and over and over again that it's not, we've got to adjust to that and change our response.
Right. And you're still going. It's not like you're not going. It's just going responsibly.
Yep.
You mentioned the priority dispatch system, which is used so often for the EMS side of things. And for the listeners, priority dispatch system, there's several out there that help the dispatcher code the call for lights and sirens response, no lights and sirens response. In some areas, it's if an ambulance is going alone or if the ambulance is going with the fire department. But that priority dispatch system works pretty well. And it is available for the fire side of things as well, but not a lot of areas use it for fire. Am I right with that?
Yeah, I don't see it a ton. We just actually in our county, we just started using it some. Breaks it down into Alpha, Delta, Charlie, Bravo, Alpha calls. And then we, depending on, an echo call, anything that's an immediate life threat, person trapped in an active fire. Echo call, hey, yeah, let's get that juices ramped up and let's get there and let's take care of this thing.
Yeah.
An Alpha call is a minor incident fire alarm with no smoke or flames. So we're just transitioning to getting that out. Different departments are going to respond to it differently on how they want to respond, but it's a step in the right direction. And I would encourage folks to start doing that. I encourage folks all the time, work with your dispatch center. We bring them out to, Firefighter 1 classes. We put them in turnout gear. We have them see what we do and how we do it. let them run calls with us and do all those kind of things. It's been a huge eye opener for them.
Yeah.
Back in the day, most of our dispatchers were firefighters. Now we have, majority civilian dispatchers that don't know anything about the fire service. I can't fault them for not sharing the right information or doing stuff when nobody's taking the time to show them, hey, what we do. Invite those folks out to the firehouse, go down to the 911 center and sit with them and have these conversations. Guys, this is why this information is important to us, and this is how we can work together. Because we all want the same thing, the best outcome for Mrs. Smith when she picks up the phone and calls 911.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a big advocate of that, for as much as the dispatcher can learn going and putting turnout gear on and going to the firehouse or going to the training ground, bring the firefighters up to the dispatch center and let's see how they operate, because a lot of cases it opens some eyes. I never realized everything that was going on because I thought they weren't doing anything because I didn't hear them on the radio. Well, there's a lot of other things going on and just talking on the radio. So
technology's done a lot of great things for us, okay, but it's also limited us in some things too. Back in the day when I was a firefighter, a couple dispatchers that I had in this county, I could tell by the way they clicked the microphone. Whether it was a pause click or a straight click or the first words out of their mouth. When Dave Reynolds would get on the air and say Cortlandville monitors, I knew it was an automatic alarm, something that wasn't too, that kind of stuff. When he got on the air and said Cortlandville fire, put your stuff on, baby, because something's cooking when we get there. But those days are gone. We used to be able to hear in the background. I could hear the phone bank.
All the phones ringing, right? Yeah, then you know.
Man, something's cooking because all these lines are ringing. Now with technology and the headsets and those kind of things, we don't have it anymore.
Right.
We used to all be on the same channel and listen to all that radio traffic. Now we're dispatching on one channel, everything else is on. So my firefighters, when their pager goes off, they hear one thing and never hear anything else. They don't know if anybody came to the department and responded, any of that kind of stuff, without using the I am responding and other things that we do there. But a lot of those things that used to work to our benefit to help us understand what we had aren't there anymore.
This isn't a dispatch show, but you just brought up a great topic because I get in this discussion all the time with especially younger members. We go back and forth where they rely on the technology. They rely on their phone or the apps, but they're not getting real-time updates. They're not carrying, I have it right here, their minute or radio, if you still carry one of these, right? And I'm like, but how do you know what units are getting out? How do you know if units were slowed down and you're still maybe going a little aggressively in your personal vehicle? How do you know updates? How do you know that a warning was issued about, hey, the scene's compromised or whatever? Don't you want, and in some cases you can't today because technology has gone so far that they can't carry a minuter or something. But if you can carry the radio, the minuter, and listen to what's going on, it's so important too. I also want to, you mentioned a little bit ago the St. Louis the St. Louis practice of on the quiet. And I find it a coincidence too that this Kansas City tragedy is not too far off from St. Louis. But it was, I believe I read an article in one of the periodicals within the last couple of years, we hit the 20-year anniversary mark of St. Louis introducing the on the quiet response. Maybe it was even 25 years, but we're right in that realm of when St. Louis said, we're doing this on the quiet response, which structured and made tiers for their fire responses. And in the article, it even said, you know what? Nothing burned to the ground since we've done that. Heck, New York City introduced it years ago. They can upgrade. That's what a lot of people don't understand. They can upgrade. The dispatcher gets more information. They can upgrade the assignment. Conversely, they can downgrade the assignment, or that's where the problem comes in. We're good at upgrading. We're not often good at downgrading. And again, you get those people, they're not going to come. People are going to get mad. Well, say that in a court of law when the dispatcher gives you the info where you should be downgrading. And it's a challenge. But St. Louis was the first, I believe, weren't they?
Yeah, it's the first one, or the first major one that I was aware of, and in their stuff, in the studies and the follow-ups that they did, they figured that had saved about 45 seconds running lights and sirens over not running.
Oh, wow, not even a minute. Wow.
On average, and people go, well, fire doubles and blah, 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 blah. But again, 45 seconds. I had, I'm at Thanksgiving dinner with my aunt and uncle shortly after I'd gotten into fire service, and they weren't in the fire service. They didn't know a whole lot about the fire service, but they challenged me at dinner that day, and they said, why do the trucks, lights and sirens, blow intersections, push everybody off the road and those kind of stuff? And then we're going in the same direction the fire truck is. The fire truck gets there and parks, and people get off the truck, and then they stand there and slowly put on their gear and all. They go, why don't they work on that piece of it and saving a few seconds versus the response piece? I didn't have an answer for them. I go, I don't know. St. Louis, in that thing, they found their maintenance costs went way down. All of a sudden, they're not burning brakes up. Their tires are lasting longer. They're using less fuel and all of those kind of things. Kind of an outlier on that whole St. Louis thing was their dumpster fires went down by like 90% after they did this. And they're like, what does dumpster fires have to do with lights and sirens? And what they finally figured out was the kids were lighting the dumpster fires to watch the circus response from the fire department. And once the fire truck just started rolling up and putting the fire out, and they didn't get to see all the excitement and commotion, they moved on to something else.
Right. And again, we're not advocating not going to these calls. It's just we've got to be responsible. And, just again, not to keep going on about these stories, but this is why you stay a student of the fire service. Actually, I have it right here. One of the periodicals in the last month, I doing my Christmas reading last week. And they cited all these recent examples of lawsuits and that were settled for millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. Incident commanders being criminally charged for decisions they made. Think of that in your volunteer firehouse. Who wants to run for chief? Okay, well, you could end up on the hot seat someday, and you could be liable for millions of dollars because you weren't properly trained. You weren't properly following protocols. You weren't following it's right in here, today's best practices at the emergency scene. And there's 3 or 4 examples in this editorial that was in a recent periodical. If anybody wants a copy of it, I'll scan and send it to you, about, chiefs being subpoenaed, text messages being subpoenaed, chiefs being found guilty for firefighters' deaths. I could go on. And yes, people, you could end up in the court of law if you were going to a fire alarm activation and you were told it was burnt food or a malfunction and you decided to still drive, not exercising due regard. Even if you're going lights and sirens still, and it's totally up to you, if you're not driving with due regard, if you're not following or doing the best with the information you're getting, you could be in a lot of trouble. It's that simple.
It is. And it's funny, people in my own department have gone, man, ever since you went to work for this insurance company, you become a real prude. You become a real jerk because you're trying to hold us, accountable for all this stuff. I go, guys, when I sit at my desk, nobody calls me to say, hey, Dave, how is everything? I hope life is great. I said, it's usually a chief, a firefighter, a fire commissioner somewhere in this country. And the conversation usually starts with, hey, I've got a little problem, or we need a little help. Or my favorite line is, you're not going to believe this one. Well, trust me, I'm going to believe it because we see it over and over and over again every Monday when that report comes in. And then they tell me the story of what's going on in their department and how it's flipped their department upside down when one of these incidents or accidents occurs. And, when too many of the times it was totally preventable, you scratch your head and you go, man, I feel sorry for you, but I don't know how to help you at this point. I need to help you up front and not getting into this situation to begin with.
Yeah.
And that's so when we start talking about, take a look at your responses, take a look at your policies and procedures. Most everybody, when I do an EVOC course and ask the course, how many people got a policy that says you'll stop at every negative right-of-way intersection? Just about every hand in the room goes up. We've got that. Okay. NFPA 1500 says we have to do that. It's in our policy, all these kind of things. And then I'll ask the follow-up question, and how many of you stop at every intersection? And the hands don't go up. So apparently I'm not talking loud enough. How many of you stop at every intersection? And they all sit there and kind of smile and smirk. I go, this is a problem. Guys, this is a problem, because as soon as you get in that accident, some attorney is going to ask for that policy. Now he's got your policy that says you were supposed to stop. He's got an NFPA standard that says you were supposed to stop. He's got your state vehicle and traffic law that says, yes, you can proceed through that intersection, but only after showing due regard for everyone else. I'm not an attorney, never played attorney on TV, didn't sleep in a Holiday Inn Express last night. But if you kill somebody in an intersection, I'm pretty sure I can convince a jury that you didn't use due regard for everybody else in that situation.
And you know what else they're going to have? They're going to have the recordings from the alarm office with the phone calls coming in stating
Yep.
the information. And again, let's talk about changing this culture. First of all, let's be very clear. We are not advocating that we do not respond to these calls, that we do not respond with lights and sirens. It's just do it when it's warranted, and do it based on the best information available, and try and prevent your incident from coming across Dave's desk on Monday morning.
Right. And again, if we don't do this, if we don't admit this is a problem and we don't wake up and start taking care of this ourselves, it's going to someday that car that we collide with is going to be the daughter, the wife, a son, a relative, cousin of somebody in political power. And they're going to go, enough is enough. Why this is a senseless death that did not have to occur. And then the government is going to start telling us which calls will run lights and sirens on and those kind of things. And I don't know about how much trust you have in our elected officials, but I know I would not want them making those decisions for us.
I just thought of something too, and there's so many incidents and stories, but here's one that happened in my career that I can think of. And so you got the fire truck going lights and sirens, and it may be warranted, it may not be. That's not the point here. And it's even if it could stop at the intersection like it's supposed to, and the car that has the green light stops, it's the car behind the car that doesn't know what's going on and doesn't expect the car in front of them to stop, and all of a sudden there's an accident occurring there. That can result in serious injuries. And again, if the fire truck is going to a serious incident, it's an unfortunate situation that happened. The fire truck stopped, was waiting for the cars to clear the intersection. It's just the second car in line or the third car in line didn't hear it and didn't expect the car in front of it to stop, and that caused the accident. But again, you do that and you're going to a non-emergency type call, and the court's going to tell you whether it was that an emergency call or wasn't it. Well, it was a fire alarm. Yeah, but you had 2 phone calls from the homeowner saying, I don't want the fire department. It was burnt food. I burnt the popcorn. Water was dripping. I had a water leak, whatever. And now you still decided to go, and you caused this incident at a red light because you were going to go through it. Even though you did it right, you stopped because it was red. It still caused an accident, even though you were doing everything wrong. Now they're going to dig deep into what type of call were you going on? What is your policy?
The deck really is stacked against us, and we need to understand that. We need to step up and understand that. We need to take a breath. Hey, again, like you, I'm not advocating we don't use lights and sirens. They have a purpose. They have a need. I'm concerned that if we don't take care of this, we're going to lose that ability, and that would be awful. But as organizations and things, there was Facebook this week. I saw another agency down, and I can't remember, it was Virginia, it was somewhere down in the southeast coast, that the agency came forward and said, and they cut out lights and sirens for the majority of their calls. And you should see the comments on there from us, from firefighters and EMS people. You can't do this. This is blasphemy. It's irresponsible. People are going to die, all this kind of stuff. Go, no, these guys are stepping up and trying to do the right thing.
Right.
No, we're our own worst enemy a lot of times.
Yeah, for sure we are. So in my department, we went to a modified response before I was even chief, and I've been out as chief over 10 years now. So I'm going to guess early to mid 2000s, might have even been before that. We changed it for alarm activations that only our first 2 pumpers go lights and sirens. Everything else goes cold. New York City's doing it. We talked about St. Louis, and it's Buffalo, New York, my first ring city here. They're doing it. And again, let the dispatcher play a role here. Let's work them into the team here. They're professionals and work together. And the people that say, that respond, people are going to die. You know who might die? A loved one of yours at an intersection or, somewhere else by a fire truck, not following what would be a good practice. So who's responsible for changing this culture, Dave?
I think we all are. I think it takes some, self-reflection. As a driver of an emergency vehicle, am I doing the right thing? Trust me, I hear the page, my adrenaline starts to go up. I flip the sirens on, and we've got every bell, whistle, and siren known to mankind on our vehicles. Okay, that amps me up even a little bit more. As the driver, I got to take a breath and go, slow down. Just slow down. If I don't get these people there, we're not going to do any good on the other side. You said that right at the very beginning of this thing. Okay. As an officer of my organization, I got to take a look at my policies. and say, what are we doing? I got to take a look at my responses as driver. A lot of times it's our chiefs driving like idiots in the chiefs vehicles. What example are they setting for everybody else? Okay. Slow down, take a breath, realize what we're doing. As a commissioner, as an authority having jurisdiction, okay, again, it's not my job as a commissioner to micromanage my fire chief or my fire department, but I see how they're responding. I see what they're doing. And once in a while, I pick up the phone and say, hey, chief, I witnessed this, and this is not going to end well for any of us. We've got to get a handle on these type of things. I'm not calling a driver and telling them what to do and not do, but I've got to go down through the chain. We always talk about going up through the chain of command. As a commissioner, I got to go down through that same chain. Say, chief, you need to fix this problem because it is a problem, and we need to admit that. So it's all of us, and until we get on the same page and until we start talking together, pull your policies out, look at them, see what they say. If you're not following those policies, maybe they need to be updated. Maybe there's a reason that they don't have a policy that says one thing and be doing something completely different as a department. Right. You're opening that legal liability up even more.
And if you still haven't thought about the need to change and to create these policies, and you're still going to respond how you want to, which is fine. I'm not going to argue. Just consider these two examples. A fire officer, in most cases a chief, is inside of a structure that they went to for an alarm activation. He's inside the house, inside the structure. There is no fire. You've been through the house. There's no smoke. There's no fire. It's your typical malfunction, or there's the bag of burnt popcorn, whatever. While you're still finishing your investigation, getting the homeowner's name, making conversation with the homeowner, helping them reset, whatever you're doing, why are vehicles still coming lights and sirens? Can we not at least agree that maybe we should slow our vehicles down? You are now there. You have now verified it's a malfunction. It's accidental. Here's another one for you. You're at your firehouse on a drill night. You're at your firehouse on a meeting night. Or you're at your firehouse and there's 20 people there because everyone likes hanging out there. That's great. A routine medical call comes in. Now, when I say routine, I'm talking we're not all hands are needed. It's not a cardiac arrest. It's not a serious trauma. It's the abdominal pain. It's the finger laceration. In some cases, we're sending 2, 3, 4 chief vehicles. In some cases, an ambulance with a light rescue. In some cases, on top of that, a paid ambulance service. Can we not agree that maybe a more prudent thing is, hey, we've got a full crew here for our light rescue and ambulance. Maybe one chief should go. Do we need to send all 3 chiefs, lights, and sirens to that call? I just think these are discussions we should be having. Hopefully there's an emergency medical or a priority dispatch system in place that's telling them to go cold. But if not, chances are we're still all going hot to that. But can we at least talk about that where we can have some common sense that our light rescue, our ambulance has 4, 5, 6 people on it. The chief is a very well-trained paramedic or EMT. He's going to the call. Do assistant chiefs need to go? Can they not stay back at the firehouse? Sometimes we're like a circus convoy going down the highway, and you get to the scene, and 2 or 3 people are needed. And what are the other people doing? They're sitting outside in case they're needed. No argument there. However, did you see the ball game last night? What are you doing this weekend? Well, how does that look to the public? And then, God forbid, here comes another vehicle that they get in an accident when people are already there taking care of the patient. There's room for meeting in the middle here. There's no doubt.
Absolutely. And then for the folks that have taken the time and joined us on this podcast, can't thank you enough for doing that. But again, hopefully we've got some wheels spinning. Hopefully we've got you thinking. Go back and have those discussions. Tom, I just like you, I'm trying to slow down the amount of nights I'm spending on the road and training and all that kind of stuff too. But beyond the sirens class, if we can put 100 people in a room and we can have 2 people walk out of that room afterwards going, we're going to change the way we're doing something. To me, that's what it's all about. That's a success. So the resources are out there. Utilize them. If you don't have sample policies, your insurance carrier probably has a whole book full that they can give you. I don't know a single insurance company that's not willing to come sit with your organization and talk to you about your responses and have these tough conversations, because we got to do it.
Yeah, and that's a whole other side, right? Another reason to consider it is what's happening in the insurance world today, Dave. Costs are skyrocketing. Our Fire District Affairs newsletter just had a very good article on the coming insurance crisis. And I don't want to keep you much longer, but do you want to just give a nutshell of if for no other reason, people, we have an insurance problem in this country?
Hey, I don't sell insurance. I'm not licensed to sell insurance, so I can't give you insurance advice. But I work for an insurance company, and I see all those things, and those are the claims that come through and all that kind of stuff. I can tell you that the market has really changed really quickly. When you start looking at the reinsurers and their want to insure fire departments, it's decreasing because fire departments are not a good risk. You look at the loss ratios of fire departments and the number of incidents and accidents that we have, it's not good business for an insurance company in a lot of cases. And they're to the point where they're like, we're not going to continue to insure people that have bad behavior and aren't doing the things to protect. Accidents are going to happen. That's why we have insurance. That's why we need insurance. And they get that. But when so many of these are preventable, and then we start looking at the cost of claims, look at the price of apparatus. One of the last things I did as chief was bought a new ladder truck, and it came in around $1 million. And everybody thought I spent the whole town on this ladder truck. Now you look at a ladder truck and you're 2.5. You look at a simple chief's vehicle, what I used to buy them for and what they're bought for now. Your insurance is a promise to pay when something breaks, burns, or goes out of service. So if the insurance company has to do that, they have to take in more money to pay for those new fire trucks. And the cost is skyrocketed. And now we can't even get some of them for 3 to 4 years. So now that, there's rental vehicles involved and all of that kind of stuff. You start looking at what we call social inflation. And that's the amount that juries are awarding to people. Again, that Kansas City case, $32 million. I can tell you case after case after case where what we thought was, we've had cases where somebody backed into somebody in a parking lot at a Dunkin' Donuts and thought they had a minor scratch on the vehicle. And then all of a sudden at the end of the year, you're going over their insurance with them and show them that was a $400,000 claim. They go, no. It was a scratch on a bumper. It was a scratch on a bumper until an attorney got a hold of the people in the car and convinced them now that every medical problem they've had their entire life was caused by that accident. Somebody's going to pay for that. Yeah. And the jury awards are like right out of sight. And that's called social inflation. So, the insurance, the payouts on claims is just skyrocketed and gone through the roof. And that trickles down. Somebody's got to pay for that.
Yep. Different world today. We have to be aware. So any last words of wisdom, any best practices you want to advise, or you just any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Take a look at your policies. Take a look at how you're responding. Ask yourself honest, serious questions. Are we doing what we should be doing here? Are we doing the best that we can? Are we protecting the public that we're sworn to protect? Okay. And is there ways that we could do this better and safer? And too many times the answer is going to be yes. So work with your resources, go to FDIC. Tom will be in your class on Thursday morning at 8:30. I like the 10:30 start time better because I could have gone out a little later on Wednesday night.
I wrote 10:30 in my notes, but I think it's 8:30. So I'll get back to you. I forget.
I'll be there. I'll be there at 8:30, buddy. But
right.
Send your folks to FDIC to listen to great instructors. And there's a ton of good instructors out there. There's a ton of good articles. Read the magazines, read the blogs, the websites, all of these kind of things. And, ask yourself, every line of duty death report that I get, every accident that we get, I ask myself, could that happen in my district tonight? And too many times I go, yeah. When I see the line of duty death reports come out and I see that, the same things over and over and over again. Did we do a proper 360? Did we have communication problems? Did we have water issues? All this kind of stuff. Yeah, we have those same problems in my department. Mm-hmm. Okay. What am I doing to fix it?
Right.
Because, unfortunately, we lost a firefighter. And unfortunately, we can't bring that firefighter back. But if we don't honor that death by making changes to keep that from being the next firefighter, that's on us.
Yep. And that is part of being a true professional. Learn from the past so we don't make the mistakes in the future.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much, Dave, for being on. If anyone would like to talk to you about the presentation that you do, maybe they want to bring it to their hometown or want to reach out for more information from you. You're a subject matter expert on this. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Probably the cell is the easiest. I usually have that tied to my hip 24/7, unless I'm doing a podcast like this. And now I've got 6 messages came through while we're on this thing, but 607-423-1636.
Very
607-423-1636. Give me a call. Love to chat with you, talk about what's going on in your department and see if we can't help.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And again, people, not advocating that we don't go investigate. It's just let's do it prudently. Let's do it carefully. Let's make sure we are putting all the right pieces together to have a safe response. Because if we don't get there, we're not helping who needs us. And the repercussions continue for years to come. And the poster child, they're all out there. So thank you again. The past chief and fire commissioner Dave Denniston. I really appreciate you coming on. If anybody would like to carry on this conversation or any conversation about our professional volunteer fire service, you can reach out to me at tamerrill63@aol.com, via my Facebook page, the Professional Volunteer Fire Department, through my website. But again, I want to wish you all a great 2026. I'm looking forward to another great year of podcasts. Hopefully I'll see you at FDIC or anywhere else I'll be out and around the country. Reach out to me at any time, because I just want to hear from the brothers and sisters out there and talk about our great fire service. My next show will be in February. I don't have the exact date yet. And we're going to keep talking about this great volunteer fire service and all the things that we can all do to keep that professional brand, both personally and organizationally. So remember, folks, true professionalism is never defined by a paycheck. And as we enter 2026, always remember also that your residents are owed professional service delivered by professional firefighters who represent a professional